right, hello. Hey, Josh. Now, hopefully everyone should hear me. I was not giving everyone the usual dose of bad jokes. I've come to realize that might be how a lot of people like to end their week, with a little forced chuckles.
Looks like your lack of sleep.
Say it again.
Looks like you are having a lack of sleep.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Last week was worse for sleep. Some of us were, and some of you on the call were probably, recording some KubeCon talks. Here's some advice. Not only don't wait till the last day to record your talk, but don't wait until the evening of the last day, especially if you have 2 talks to record. Anyway, last week was worse, so I've gotten some sleep since then. Yeah, we've been making a lot of progress. All of you in the community have been making quite a bit of progress on things. So we're 4 minutes in. We'll no doubt have others joining, but it is time to get going. Curious, could anyone hear the noise in the background earlier? Or there was a fan right next to me? And okay, good. Good deal. All right, very good. Welcome everyone. It is Friday. Let me start that over. What is this? Today's now, right? It's the day before Halloween. Welcome everyone. Happy Halloween. For those of you that do that sort of a candy thing. Curious, anybody being social over Halloween? Or is everyone staying masked up and hermiting?
I am going to hermit. I'm not doing anything, or at least not yet. I might have some plans arise, but otherwise staying in.
Good. Hopefully it won't keep you away from the candy. I mean, like that's 2 different things.
That's never been a problem for me.
Good. All right, fair enough. Good deal. Everyone that's on the call should have access to this doc. There's a link to the doc in the chat. If you don't see it, say something. If you don't see it, I don't know that we've shown some of the work that the community members here have done recently on this community page. There's a handy reference to the myriad meetings that go on here. There are 2 meetings that are listed that we are maintainers within, or that we spend a lot of time in. And so a lot of things that are done in this community end up being in those 2, discussed in those 2 CNCF calls. And so hence they're listed here, but this is a nice reference. That's nice. While I'm giving a general update like this, I'll also say, well, I'm pretty sure it was Jose who's just joined the community. He recently put up he and Pratya recently put up a new calendar here to be able to track a lot of those same things. And it just went up a few minutes ago. And I'd be curious if, let me post the link to this, in the chat. If you would, could some of you go ahead and click on these meetings? And I'm curious to know what your experience is, because mine is, I get a pop-up to a Google Calendar, but then I also get an error message. And so what all do you experience if you click on one of those events? It also becomes evident when you lay it out visually that my goodness, we have a vibrant community. A lot of people here to do a lot of things. So sort of 5 direct layer 5 project calls a week, which is good. And we were just talking about adding another one. So there's been, thanks to some efforts from Jesus and from Chris, there have been an influx of Spanish-speaking individuals in the community recently, which is great. And they're actually converging on translating Meshri's docs into Spanish. And so we'll talk about that, I guess. Good. Okay. If you don't toss your name in while someone else is giving a talking, I'll toss your name in and I'll put a nice little made up last name next to you, just as a forewarning. So you don't have to put your name in, but if you do, there's a couple of reasons why we put it in there. One is to, it's about to be what Pratik is going to talk about in some respects. It's about doing things openly. It's also about the fact that at some point, we occasionally, as different contributors, are discussing in a heated way what design to go with on a particular project or how to take it forward. That as the community grows and grows and grows, there'll be the call and need for more and more governance. And one of the things that the Service Mesh interface group, and being a maintainer of that spec, I've been asked to define what it means to be active in the community. And being active then earns you the right to vote on a particular disagreement or vote for a particular thing, or to remain in the community or to retain a maintainer's hat, of which, for those of you who didn't notice, it was 2 weeks ago that we ended up announcing, or was it 3 weeks ago? Well, the promotion of 3 different maintainers in the community here. They're bringing aboard, I think, 5 different interns and 2 employees for Layer 5. And so we're growing quickly. And part of the point of putting your name down is that at some point, being active is, there's different ways to count that. And I think it's really important how it's counted. I think it's really important how it's counted when it's used for something. And the being active is coming to a meeting. Maybe you said something, maybe you didn't. That counts. Maybe it's contributing some code. That counts. Maybe it's writing some documentation, filing a bug, providing feedback, going and talking about the work, the projects that are going on. Like being engaged comes in all different forms. I've been disappointed in a number of other communities where it was really only code that was counted. And I thought that was a miss. So let's get into the topics. Pratik, I think you have our first topic today.
All right. So am I audible?
Sure.
Okay, sure. So this is just a general kind of thing which we want to talk about over here, which is for the last week, we were checking our Slack stats, like how much our community is being active. And we had around, if you see in the community meeting doc, we had around 2,900 messages last week only. So that's good. We have been active. But one of the point of worry being is 80% of them have been in private discussions, like you are DMing someone and like just the 2 of you or 3 of you are like having a discussion on that, which we believe is good for if you have a particular doubt, which is like you have to just talk with that person only. But we would like you to, like, if you have some doubt or some suggestions, anything which like anyone else can learn something more from that, we would like you to be more public and just use all the channels we have, whether it's Meshery, whether it's Meshery CTL, or even general or newcomers channel, that you ask your doubts over there, and anyone would come and like solve your doubts. So yeah, we would like to see that the 80% of all messages that we are, 80% of all the messages being DM should reduce to a smaller number and people get more active in public channels. So yeah, why are we doing this is because we want everybody to learn more. Like when we have a discussion over some topic, like we had a discussion in general, like in the general channel today, that how somebody was having a doubt over how to push something like that. He was having some doubt with Git, and like Lee and Josh jumped in and explained him all the steps that he needs to do in order to correct his, like to know how to use that particular part of Git. And so in that way, a lot of other people came to know that how you have to do this. So like this helps everybody, not just the person who is asking the doubt, but anybody in future who is also looking forward to contribute or just have some doubt. He will get to know that how things are done over here, and it it kind of gives you an awareness and like how everything can be done, and get engaged more in the community. So yeah, the primary purpose of like we would encourage you to participate in public channels more often is that everybody gets to learn and everybody gets to grow at the same time. So yeah, we would just like everyone to like discuss in the private public channel more often. That.
Cool. Pratik, thank you for that. Just to echo that for a moment, I would say it's a pretty busy community. There's a lot of slacking that happens. And when you think of how much happens privately, you start to have a sense of just how much is going on, which is fantastic. There's as the community grows, and as we, individuals that have been here and are contributing get promoted into or get acknowledged as being and performing different roles. It's a very good thing, because we need for there to be captains of different projects in different areas, folks to go to that sort of different owners, if you will. That's actually part of what happens when discussions are public. People have a sense, or have an opportunity to chime in and a sense of ownership and literally ownership. And so for me, like, I don't know, maybe it's just important to highlight this first one, and that is learning is a real theme of what goes on here. There's a lot of tech, a lot of languages, a lot of tech. And for as much as I like to think that I know, I could recount each day of this week that I learned something new. As a matter of fact, I think it was on the wee hours of Wednesday morning, I learned that in AWS API Gateway, you can go and reconfigure your routes, change how your config of what you want AWS API Gateway to do, and it looks like all of the settings are there and accepted. But unless you go over to the hidden UI menu that says Deploy API, it might take you about 12 hours of troubleshooting to figure that out. So anyway, the point is, don't be embarrassed about learning, because everyone here is learning. And so the more questions you ask publicly, the faster we'll all move. Thank you for that, Pratik. It's a really good message. I'm glad that you brought it up. Oh, very good. Next topic, Jose, who I don't know that he's on, but we just talked about the calendar. And so that was nice. And then HashiConf was had here 2 weeks ago, a couple of new products and some whiz-bang features in Consul 1.9. And so we're fortunate that Layer5 has partnered with HashiCorp, and we're fortunate that actually we had a couple of new HashiCorp folks join this week in the community, but also that Blake has been a long-standing member and pretty active. And so Blake's also one of the Consul product managers whose responsibility is, or the one whose responsibility is over Consul's service mesh functionality and roadmap. And so Blake, really happy to hear from you today. I figured that the community could, one that Blake, actually there's some updates I don't know that we've conveyed to you about the Consul adapter. I know that we've spoken about various enhancements that it needs to have. It has, I think since the last time that we've spoken on the adapter, it has been overhauled and it has a lot more functionality. It's not 1.9 compatible, or we haven't tested that, but it is in a much better place, which is good. That was kind of a blocking factor, I think, for some of the things we were looking to do.
Yeah, I actually, I saw some of the pull requests on that and saw that it was updated from, I think it was only able to deploy Consul 1.5 before. And so now I believe it was 1.8.4 or 1.8, one of the latest production version before the latest beta. So that was great to see. I really appreciate person who in the community who contributed to updating that. I think I provided some comments on the PR, some pointers to kind of how to best configure Consul, but glad to see that. And, I know we definitely have some customers who have been looking at Meshery for multiple things they want to do, primarily for benchmarking. And so they were pretty excited to see that now that's updated, they can use it and deploy Consul and do some of their testing. So that was really great.
I'm glad that we're speaking about this, because I just recalled yesterday, I had a new connection on LinkedIn that was asking if I could give him a set of slides on the difference between Istio and Consul, because he wants to use them internally to, I don't know, help facilitate a decision. And so, so that's kind of a timely, so I'll have to go give him some slides.
Let me know if I could help with that.
Yeah.
Let me know either way.
I will. But Blake, I figured if, yeah, we're all ears about 1.9, and is it beta currently, or
It is. Yep, it's beta. So let me share my screen, and I'll start with kind of talking through the latest announcement for 1.9, what some of these features mean, and then what the path is to GA. And so, as Leah mentioned, we had HashiConf, which is our user conference, just a couple of weeks ago. We typically hold 2 of these, or twice a year, once for the EU and kind of that side of the world, and then one in the US. And so that US version of HashiConf just passed. And as part of that, let me zoom in a little bit, on Consul, what we did was introduced a number of features. And I'll just kind of walk through these. The first one is what we're calling application-aware intentions. And what this is intentions in Consul are the authorization policies that you can configure to define which applications within the service mesh are allowed to talk to other apps. So I think Istio calls these authorization policies, for example, very similar. And how they worked in the past with Consul is that they were all based off of service identity. So if you had a service named web and a service named DB, you can just create an intention to say, allow this connectivity at layer 4 or at the the TCP layer, or allow or deny that. You can do that on a per namespace level, but it was all based off of just simply service identity. And there were a number of our customers and users in the open source community that wanted more granularity than that. They wanted to be able to enforce controls based off of, say, HTTP path information instead of just service identity. Like, without this, they were handling some of that directly within their applications. And so Consul 1.9 now brings that, we have now the mix of identity-based and application-aware intentions. And so for the application-aware, you're able to define intentions which match off of things in the HTTP request, like the path, header, and method, and define complex policies to allow very granular access to services and different endpoints. And so like here's an example of these service intentions. I should highlight maybe another change that we made is before these intentions were managed at the CLI or via an API, but they were very, tab back over here. It was just a very, very simple interface, and you would have kind of this one intention per source and destination that you want. What we ended up doing is moving these into what we call config entries. So this is how all of the other layer 7 routing within Consul is handled. It's more of a document format similar to something like YAML. And then it gives you a way to, for multiple sources, keep that and kind of track that in one file. So we're saying allow TCP connectivity from web, or sorry, deny TCP connections to the DB service from the service name web, and then allow connections from API. But if we go and actually kind of look at the, oh, sorry, let me find the right docs here. If we look at the layer 7 portions of this, so now we can see that they get more expressive. We're able to define, again, permissions on the HTTP level, and then say, allow only connections if the path is, starts with /v2, and allow these methods. We can control and allow or require that certain headers also exist. So much deeper level of granularity. And what this allows you, from an operator or application developer perspective, is to have a consistent way that you're defining your security policies for both TCP and HTTP applications, and then having all of that enforced by the service mesh instead of having to maybe handle some of that enforcement directly within your application. So that was the first big feature, and we've got a number of documents on how to use and deploy that. There's an actual guide for actually walking through and learning how to use these intentions. I definitely recommend checking that out. That's over on our learn.hashicorp.com website. The other big feature that we announced is service mesh visualization. And so what this provides is within the Consul UI, we now give you a topology view showing you how your services are configured within the service mesh, which for a given service, say app, which services are dependent on it from a downstream perspective, and then what is it in turn dependent on, so what upstreams does it need, and then show you the health and availability of those service dependencies. And this just makes it easier for operators, one, to determine once they deploy their apps, did they properly stitch everything together? And then if everything is connected with the right dependencies, again, what's the health and availability of those? We also built on this to also include metrics. So let me zoom out a little bit here. We now have a pluggable metrics interface. The first driver that we have for that supported is using Prometheus. But if you configure Consul now to talk to your Prometheus instance, you can get real-time metrics for services and their communication within the service mesh. And so this, again, helps as you're maybe troubleshooting something within your environment. You don't have to go back and forth between your Grafana dashboard and Consul. You're able to get one view here within Consul of the configuration and then the communication between services. And then if you need to drill down and look at more historical data, then you would click this link here, Open Metrics Dashboard. It would go launch you into your Grafana instance where you can look at more, either the metrics more in depth or again, the historical data there. So the other big change that we introduced is custom resources for Kubernetes. Sorry, I have a question here in the chat. Just want to make sure I get to it. Oh, awesome. Visualization sounds great. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. A lot of people definitely like that feature. So custom resources is another big change. I was showing some of the config examples earlier of deploying, configuration entries. So again, I mentioned this is how you manage layer 7 configuration within Consul. There's multiple different config entries for doing routing, splitting, and then service resolving. And you can see some of the examples here. If I go under the router, they look similar to the examples I showed before, right? But this is not, in a Kubernetes environment, this is not what people are used to. What they would have to do in Kubernetes is they could deploy Consul with the Helm chart and then deploy their pods or their services. But when they're making Consul related config, they have to go and configure it this way with now a different workflow, and then save or write that into Consul with a different workflow. And so we introduced CRDs in order to allow you to have a streamlined Kubernetes first experience. So we support all of those same, or most of these same configuration entries that we support natively. But now you can do things like, if I click under service router, oh, excuse me, this is not, let me scroll down a little bit. We have examples down here. So now you can see, this is an example of a proxy defaults config entry, but right directly, in line with your other YAML, you can define the Consul configuration. This example, we're actually bypassing some of, or exposing some other paths through the proxy outside of the authorization or intention checks that the proxy normally has. If I go down a little more, like here's that intentions example I was showing earlier, now in YAML form. So none of the fields or anything's changed, but again, this allows you within Kubernetes to keep all of this now config in line with how you normally deploy things, and then interact with it how you normally would. So you can actually go over to a terminal real quick, and you can do things like get, service intentions. Oh, excuse me, my sharing is paused because I was not sharing my entire screen. Let me do that. Sorry about that. So you can do things like this, get service intentions and see those intentions there. Obviously, if I want to look at that in a little more detail. Oops. So I can see all that, right? And interact with it just like I would any other Kubernetes resource. So there are also tutorials for that on our website. So if you go to, again, learn.hashicorp.com, full tutorial on managing, using CRDs to manage resources within Consul. And then one of the last kind of larger features we introduced was added support for deploying Consul on OpenShift. OpenShift obviously is Kubernetes, but there's some slight differences in that platform versus vanilla Kubernetes. It runs with a little more strict security constraints and policies than what a standard Kubernetes distribution has. And so we just had to update the Helm chart to accommodate for those things. But now, if you want to deploy Consul on OpenShift, the Helm chart, the latest version of the Helm chart is validated with OpenShift 4.x. So you can use that and deploy it in that platform. And there's a associated guide for how that, how to do that deployment if you want to kick the tires on it and test it as well. So I saw a question here in the chat about the application aware intentions, and if that is similar to a constraints framework of OPA or something totally different and unrelated. To be honest, I'm not so familiar with OPA and constraints, but what the intentions is that is actually utilizing Envoy RBAC rules under the hood. So in previous versions of Consul, what we did is we would configure Envoy with an x.z filter so that it made a callback to a local Consul agent to check whether or not connections should be allowed. And now in this release, we're actually removing that callback. All of the policy rules for TCP or HTTP are installed directly in the proxy using Envoy RBAC and then evaluated directly in the data plane. So you get a little better performance as well, and a little better consistency in how those things are enforced. So that's kind of it. I think there's some other features in here as well that are interesting. one of them, we're working on synchronizing health checks from pods, liveliness and readiness probes into Consul so that that health is accurately represented. And then this last feature listed here, it's a little vague, but what this essentially is in very large environments, we've changed the communication protocol between the Consul servers and clients to make it more efficient, allowing you to greatly reduce CPU and bandwidth utilization. And so in environments with, tens of thousands or thousands of nodes, they can see, up to, a 3x decrease in CPU utilization or even greater in bandwidth utilization because of those changes in that format. So definitely that was, I'd say this is a foundation feature that it took us a while to develop and add into Consul. The first APIs that this impacts are APIs for service health and availability, but we're looking to expand that out over time. And then hopefully all of Consul's API endpoints will utilize this more efficient communication model. So I think you'll see a little more to come in this. Probably things are a little more exciting and make this feature, the value of this feature click over time.
Blake, do you recall the tech that's being used for the streaming?
Yeah, so we basically changed from our own kind of RPC mechanism between clients and servers. Now that's all using gRPC and using protobufs in order to send that data across versus before it was encoded with, I'm not entirely sure. I'm drawing a blank there, but
it doesn't matter because that was the, yeah, cool. Okay, right. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's all I had. I definitely want to be conscious of time, but I will put some links here in the community doc for some of the documentation that I shared, tutorials and things like that. So if you want to kick the tires on Consul, I definitely recommend checking those out. And please give us feedback. This Consul 1.9 is currently in beta, and so there might be a few bugs or things lurking here or there, but test it out. Give us feedback. This is definitely the time for us to make some of those changes, whether it's technical or on the UX side before it's GA. So the feedback's valuable.
Nice. Yeah, Blake. Thank you, Blake. Questions for Blake? Questions about either 1.9 or Consul in general?
I thought if you could show the working demo of the visualization, it would be great.
Yeah, so I was actually trying to stand up a demo environment with that, and I don't have a working demo of that. Hopefully I can either get it, a recording together and share it in the community minutes, or
Blake, or yeah, that's true. Or there's an opportunity in there for measuring makes that pretty quick, and the ability to do different sample apps, potentially on top of the Consul. It's an opportunity to leverage Meshery in that way.
That's another potential there.
Is the, I guess a question for me, the features included in OSS versus enterprise for 1.9?
Yeah, good question. So everything that we released in 1.9 is all in open source. We didn't actually have any enterprise features in this release. We may in other releases, but really we felt these were things that were generally applicable to any user of Consul. Typically in the enterprise platform, we try to solve things that are organizational problems or introduce features that solve organizational problems or issues at scale, right? So like if you have 20 or 30 federated data centers, you're probably running this in production for a sizable organization. There's features that we have on that front that would help you more better manage those federations, for example. But something like metrics, something like intentions, anyone from the smallest Consul deployment to the largest Consul deployment would want those things. So that's all generally applicable across the board.
Other questions for Blake? Blake, roadmap items Is there any amount of that you're able to speak to?
Hopefully soon, not directly at the moment. I think we have a number of things that we're looking at. I would say very broadly, it's we are looking at further improving our UX and deployment on platforms like Kubernetes, or even just in general, kind of improving the UX and usability of certain features that already exist within Consul. So I think there are some other things we're looking at as well, but to be honest, we're currently in the planning phase for the next release. So we don't have that committed list, and nothing that I can share, at least at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just wait. I'll just pause recording for a moment, and then we'll. Nice. Yeah. Fantastic. Rate limiting, is that a current capability?
So that is not at the moment. That is something that we are looking at. I think in general, like obviously Envoy has a lot of features, a lot of capabilities, and we do have a way that users can configure some features in Envoy directly through what we call escape hatches. So if Consul doesn't bubble up something as a first class config, you have a way to insert that configuration that you need. But even that is, the UX around that could be a little bit better. So I think we're looking at, I would say, ways to improve some of that UX. So if something's not in Consul, you have an easier way to add those features. Right. Or we also, there are a set of things that I think we want to support as more first-class config items, and we'll be looking to add in the next release or so.
Nice. If you use the escape hatch, what does the upgrade path look like?
Yeah, so that's why it's kind of not the most recommended. It requires you to know how to configure Envoy directly, right? You're passing an Envoy's JSON configure thing. So if you're using a filter or a parameter that's deprecated in the next Envoy release, then that's kind of on you to do the testing and validation of that across upgrades. Whereas when we surface features, if there's changes to Envoy config, like using a V2 filter and then going to V3, or changes in parameters, we would handle that backwards compatibility, any changes to the data kind of for you. So I think other service meshes kind of have a similar thing. They have a way to inject config, and it's kind of a similar stance where you need to test it and validate it before you upgrade. So not too different on that front.
Yeah. It's hard for any product to to guarantee that the things that you're doing that the product doesn't know about, like, are going to work in the next.
Yep, exactly.
One last item for me as a note or a potential point of interest, and that is we will, with respect to, in context of SMI, the Meshery is the, I think we've spoke about this at some point, but Meshery is the, Meshery is to service meshes or to SMI what Sonaboy is to Kubernetes in terms of verifying whether or not a piece of software, like for Sonaboy, it's verifying whether or not a piece of software is in fact Kubernetes, like does it adhere to the API structure, and does it, and so Meshery has a burgeoning suite of assertions or tests that it runs to verify whether or not a given any of the 7 service meshes that claim compatibility with or conformance with SMI is in fact passes these things. And for some service meshes, they will conceptually perpetually fail one or more of those tests because they don't intend to fulfill that portion of the spec, and that's all right. And so anyway, point is, that effort is, there's a dedicated work stream in the SMI community toward beginning to earnestly engage with each of the participating meshes on what those tests are, for one, also on identifying how it is that we can guarantee provenance of the tests that are being run. And the point here is really to empower the service mesh teams themselves, or the project maintainers of the teams themselves to A, help define what those tests are kind of uniformly, B, have a voice in saying, understanding what it means. Like, hey, if like for Linkerd, for example, if there's an ingress, if there were an ingress spec, and if Linkerd doesn't intend to have an ingress gateway as a native component, does that mean it will never be compliant? The proposal is that no, that's not. It can still achieve compliance, or I'm sorry, it can achieve conformance, just maybe not full compliance or something. We have to define, it's not fully capable. We'll define those terms. Those are some of the active conversations going on. So I'm bringing up the notion that there'll be the first of those series of meetings probably scheduled for next week. So you're on the list, or you'll be solicited in terms of like interest.
Yeah, definitely. Please invite me. I know that, I've attended a number of the SMI community meetings and personally try to keep a pulse on just what's going on with that community and that spec. And I know others from HashiCorp and particularly from the Consul team have attended those as well. I know at the moment Consul has an experimental SMI controller and has only really support for the traffic spec or traffic access, I think, specification that they have. So it's fairly limited. But I think we're broadly trying to keep tabs on the traction that SMI is getting, and we'll look to invest in it kind of based off of that. I think at least from what we see from our user community and from our customers is in the past there wasn't as much interest in SMI. I think it's starting to pick up a little more. Maybe part of that's other service meshes also adopting it and it kind of gaining a little more credibility or whatever, if you will. But yeah, definitely please invite me to that. We'd look look forward to see if there's opportunities for us to increase our support for that as well. So.
Nice. Yeah, good. Yeah, Mike Morris, I think, was just on the last SMI call. So, any other questions for Blake? Nice. All right. So there might be a challenge put out there to update the Mesh console adapter to 1.9. Like, Blake, any your estimation on the end of beta?
Yeah, I was actually just gonna comment on that. So we are targeting around the week of November, I think 12th or 14th. So just a couple weeks out. But it really, again, depends on what we uncover during this testing period. There's already a number of bugs or issues that we identified. So we'll have a beta 2 hopefully sooner rather than later. And then an RC candidate and then GA is roughly the pattern we followed in the past. So expect similar for this release.
Nice. Nice. Okay. Oh, thank you, Blake. This is great job. Great features, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, obviously, I'm just here telling you about them, right? The credit goes to our team and, a lot of very talented folks who were able to, make these things a reality. So we're definitely excited about them. A lot of hard work went into, making these and releasing them. And, we're looking forward to, hearing more feedback from our community and obviously, more stories about how people are actually using and benefiting from these.
Well, all right. Well, the next item here is the notion that there's an industry analyst firm, Amalgam, similar to Gartner 451 Forrester, had recently done an analysis around Kubernetes and inclusive of service meshes specifically. And so I thought I would highlight it because we always try to highlight the fact that work that you all are doing in the community gets highlighted. And so I will work with Amalgam to see if we can have a controlled distribution of the write-up, which talks about Meshery. It talks about what a management plane is, and highlights the work that's going on here. So that's exciting. That's good. A couple other topics we have. Jesus, are you with us? Okay, yeah, I know Jesus is not on. So then I'll mention what these are. So it was 2 weeks ago, a week ago, not 2 weeks ago, there was an event held. This is the second time that we have held this or participated in this event here, which is it's an open source conference held in, well, physically last year was held in Guadalajara, and this year virtually. But Jesus was an attendee of the first year's workshop, which was on Istio, and is back this year. And now he hosted half of the workshop this year, and it was about introducing individuals to Meshery, to Go, and to React, and to the technologies here, and beginning to help people contribute to open source. And that seems to have been very successful because there are any number of pages in Meshery's documentation that are now translated to Spanish, which is great. And so Jesus was calling for another translation working session. So I'm gonna pick on Rodolfo, Mr. Martinez, briefly, both to say, hey, there's an item that you and only you on this call, I think, are particularly qualified to like assist with, and it's translation of the docs. But also, since I called you out, there is something that we overlooked when we started the call, and that's that both Rodolfo and Lionel are, I think, first time on this community call. And so, gents, there's an obligatory introduction of yourselves that we'll ask you to give to the community. So Rodolfo, if you don't mind, say hi and just introduce yourself and where you're from.
Sure. Hi, you all. My name is Rodolfo Martinez. I am from Guadalajara, Mexico. This place that the COS event was hosted. Currently, I am software developer at Rackspace. I'm working with Golang and Kubernetes and a little bit with JavaScript. So I think that I can contribute to the Meshery project with these languages. So I am glad to be here. It seems that it's a very welcome community and very friendly community. So I'm glad to be here. Next week, I will talk about Cypress and how to do the end-to-end test or integration test with Cypress to the Meshery project. So yeah, I will see you all next Wednesday.
Nice. I forgot about that. Yeah, just what an impact you're having already. So next week, one of the planned topics, I think it's for the Wednesday, November 4th call. Is that right?
Wednesday.
Sort of an introduction to everyone for the UI testing framework, Cypress, and some demo kind of examples of some initial test sets that Rodolfo has created. Nice. So there's a good teaser for next week. That'll be not in this meeting, but the Meshery dev meeting. Very good. Nice to have you, Rodolfo. Good of you to join. Lionel, if you have audio, we'd love to hear
Hi.
from you.
So my name is Lionel. My last name, sorry, is a bit more complicated. I'm working in, let's say, SmartNICs and trying to make intelligent SmartNIC more usable by software developer, more server base software developer, and obviously proxy level 4 to level 7 proxy agent as like a natural place to run those. And so we kind of work in trying to improve the experience for the developer and trying to optimize running those container CNF, VNF in those environments. And I'm based in California, San Francisco.
Oh, nice. I know that's super interesting. Yeah, there's I think looking forward into the future, just a lot of possibility there, particularly around exactly what you were saying. It's like when you're able to enable developers with an easier access to harness the power of the network like that. Yeah, I'm getting excited just having you talk about it. Actually, welcome. Thanks for jumping in. A couple. What time is it? So we got 5 minutes left. We can talk about the other topics that are here, but before we do, does anyone have a share? Does anyone else have a topic or something they wanted to bring up? A conference they're going to? Yeah, maybe just something they learned this week. It might be more interesting than hearing me talk about the other things. Yeah, so Docker Hub is bringing forth some rate limiting on the repos, such that such that images can only be pulled so frequently by a given user. And I am going to spend more time with Docker. They've asked us to come on to a call with them to record a discussion with them and to put up a couple of blog posts on docker.com, which is really coincidental that one of the blog posts that we'll put up, it will be on Imagehub. And actually to what Lionel was just talking about, Imagehub is a sample application that is closer to that a sample application that helps people understand Envoy filters and WebAssembly. And so it's closer to what Lionel was talking about, not exactly the same, but Imagehub itself as a sample app is a ripoff of Docker Hub, like, intentionally just a very simple application that doesn't actually work. Actually, it was, I'm sorry, it doesn't actually do anything. It's a sample app, but we'll talk about this on the Docker blog. Why was I bringing this up? Oh, is because the thing that was implemented in the sample app itself deals with deploying WebAssembly filters, and the use case is rate limiting to prevent a user from downloading too many images too quickly, which is, I think I get a chuckle out of it because that's exactly what Docker Hub is doing right now, is rate limiting how quickly, the number of images you can pull down for a given user. And so the blog post that we'll have on this will be pretty timely, pretty well, funny, I think. So weird. I was mostly just intending to do a share on like recent news and the relevant to us, but actually it turns out it's really relevant to us. Anyone have any other share? Anything else to talk about? Okay. 3 minutes left. I'm going to touch on one topic briefly, and we'll keep to the time though. So this last topic, is this here, that there's an underformed design spec for messages within Meshery and between all of Meshery's components. The focus of this messaging isn't so much the mechanics by which the messages are sent. That's already, a lot of that's gRPC. but it is focused probably around error codes and ensuring that there's a central collection of error codes that are well described and leveraged consistently across each of the components, so that users can troubleshoot with ease, and that there will be a central reference for that, an index to go look it up. And so that's what that was going to be about. So with that, trying to think real quick if we've got anything. We've got a demo coming up from Adolfo next week. We've got the SMI conformance meeting to engage in earnestly. And then one other, actually, so it's really good that we mentioned this. There is another specification, the SMP spec, that is being advanced kind of in context of the service mesh working group inside the CNCF. And its meeting, the next meeting for this is on this coming Wednesday, fairly early AM. And that's in part because the Googlers that we're meeting with and working with are in an earlier time zone. Yeah, good to call out because I know that we're going to have a number of newcomers on this Wednesday's call. So I'm excited about more traction on this spec. So anyway, if you're interested, the meeting link, anyone's welcome to come. The link to that meeting is in the calendar that we were showing earlier. So that's it. I think it's go forth and have some candy, I guess. Nice. Okay. Thanks all. Well, same time next week. Talk to you all soon.
Thank you,
See
Lee.
you. Bye.
Yes. Bye.
Thanks everybody.
Bye.
Bye.